We're going to continue and finalize and finish our little series on conundrums, which we've been doing over the last 3 weeks. If you want to review the last couple of them, as always, they are up on the YouTube channel for church. So you're more than welcome to just go to YouTube and search for Renuera Baptist Church, and you'll find sermons going back a number of years now. In fact, they're quite a stash of them there. And these last two will be there as well. The first one was looking at the topic of the conundrum of power. And last week we're looking at the conundrum of the perception of Christianity being a Western religion. And today I'd like to look at the conundrum of post-truth, if you like. The way that truth is spoken about by people is super revealing, I think. And over the last couple of decades, we've seen a shift in the way people talk about truth and facts. In 2006, we had Al Gore, who brought us an inconvenient truth, if you remember that one. It was a documentary looking at the climate change reality. It was really a documentary looking at the objective facts of climate change, which people need to wake up to whether they agree with them or not. And the reason that he gave the effort to make a documentary was to wake people up to facts that were there, even if they did not believe them. That was his mission. But we found that as time went on, we had another version of truth come along, which was alternative facts, if you like that wonderful phrase that was coined during the Donald Trump administration. It was a concept that if the truth is inconvenient for you, you can choose some more convenient ideas and call them facts as well. And if you say them loudly enough and brashly enough, people just might believe you. And many did, and many do. And of course, we've seen since COVID a rise in conspiracy theory buy-in by many people. Alternative facts is another expression of truth and how it's perceived in the modern world. Another one, which was made famous by Oprah, was the phrase, your truth. Your truth. She made this quote speaking and encouraging, really, the woman who'd stood up for the Me Too movement a few years ago. What I know for sure is that speaking your truth is the most powerful tool that we all have. It conveyed the idea that truth is profoundly personal and gets its value really in the life of the individual. In 2016, the latest progression was really the Oxford English Dictionary's word of the year, which was the phrase post-truth. And the definition of post-truth is the idea that facts are less important in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and to personal belief. And so the whole concept of truth and facts has been in a real state of flux the last little while. And in fact, what we are seeing is the outworking of postmodernism. And you've probably heard of the whole concept of postmodernism. It's a current of thinking which has been there over the last few decades now. It's actually quite a confusing collection of ideas. But one of its key kind of platforms really is a suspicion of power. Suspicion of those who claimed power, plus the belief that claims to an absolute truth can be power grabs in disguise. Who are you to say that your truth is true for everyone? You are trying to gain some kind of hold or mastery over things. It's a power claim. And so here is the question, I guess, for us living in a postmodern, post-truth world. Do religious beliefs fall into the category of your truth, or do they fall into the category of the truth? Or another way of saying it is are they subjective or are they objective? Subjective means they're true for you. Objective means they're true, much as Al Gore was trying to say with his documentary An Inconvenient Truth, they are true whether you believe them or not. Or can they be both, in fact? Your truth and the truth. When Oprah Winfrey praised women who'd spoken their truth about sexual abuse in the Me Too movement, really, they were being praised by her for speaking their truth and the truth. It was both your truth and the truth that they were speaking. And so I think they can actually both be true at the same time. So what about Jesus? When he says that he is the only way to God, and he rightly demands all allegiance of every single person who has ever lived and who ever will live, does this fall into your truth or the truth? Does it fall into the category of your mum makes the best lasagna in the world, or into the category of seatbelts save lives? A really important question. And I would probably commend to you the claim that Christianity are claims to objective truth, the claims of Christianity. And the reason I personally think that is true, there's a couple of them really. Firstly, our reaction to them will have real, objective consequences. A writer called Rebecca McLaughlin, which I've been quoting a bit the last little while on this topic, she says this: we cannot categorize religious beliefs as purely subjective simply because they are personal. It is personal truth, but it is also profoundly objective truth. Why? Because however deeply I believe in the claims of Jesus, if I die and my beliefs are wrong, and my atheist friends are right, then my life will end. Jesus will not call me into eternal life with him, and I will simply not. Graphic way of saying it, isn't it? How more objective can you be? How much more consequence objectively can there be in the life of a person? Do you see what she's saying? Just because the claims that Jesus made and we make in his name cannot be verified now, people think they are subjective truths. Your truth. But as she saying, in fact, they sit squarely into the category of objective truth. It's just that the objective truth error or truth will be confirmed after death. You see the difference? It is objective rather than subjective, but the verification is delayed. They are verification delayed claims to an objective truth. And I would say they are the biggest claim of all because the consequences are so big. A man who understood this was a bloke called Blaise Pascal. And he was a guy born in the 1600s. If you've ever done maths, you will have benefited from his thinking. Maybe you didn't like maths and you suffered because of his thinking, and that's probably true as well. But he was an inventor. He invented one of the first calculators. He was a mathematician. Pascal, of course, is a famous name in maths. And he was also a philosopher. And he thought a lot about the average person, the Janet or Joe Bloggs of the world, who looks at life and doesn't know for sure if God exists or if he doesn't. And he asked the question, what should that person do? What should Janet and Joe do in that situation? And so what he came up with was a thinking that was called Pascal's wager. You've maybe come across it before. It was kind of, if you've ever done TAB betting, you could probably relate to this. What he said was this: what does Janet and Joe have to bet with? Well, obviously their life. That's what's on the line here. What happens if she bets that God is not real? If he doesn't exist, then if she is right, there is no heaven and there is no hell. She has a finite gain, if you like, a finite benefit. She will have pure control over her life for 70 years on planet Earth. She can party, she can do yoga as much as she wants, she can, whatever. It's all her life to live. But it's a finite benefit because she has 70 years. However, if she's wrong and God does exist, the God of the Bible, then there will be infinite punishment. There'll be a deficit there that is infinite. Finite reward, possibly, but infinite loss, depending on the outcome. If she is right, if there's belief, if Joe Blogs has belief in God, and there is no God, he has a finite loss. He has 70 years or so on planet Earth of living under the control of someone who doesn't exist, and having a life constrained by rules perhaps that he didn't need to have. But if he is right, and the God is real, then there is infinite reward. So that's called Pascal's wager. And what Pascal was saying, that is far more rational in that situation, when there's infinite reward or infinite punishment on the line, to follow God. Now you might say, well, yes, maybe, but to that whole idea. But what he is understanding very clearly is something that many people do not understand today, that religious claims are ultimately, whether they're true or false, they fall into an objective category. It is just that their verification is delayed a little. They are both your truth and the truth, is what both Rebecca and Pascal are saying, I think. The claims to Christianity are claims to objective truth also because the Christian faith is grounded in objective history. Imagine a situation where a wife suddenly learns that her husband of many years has been cheating on her, having an affair. In fact, he's been doing it for years without her knowing about it. Her knowing or not knowing about his cheating may change her. She suddenly has to reinterpret her life in light of this new data. But it doesn't change the fact that the truth has always been there. Does that make sense? The truth's always been there, that hasn't changed. But her knowledge of it causes her to reinterpret her life in profound ways. In the same way, history has to be objectively true, even if people do not know about it. It is there. It is just that people may or may not be aware of it. And people who suddenly see the truth of the things that Jesus said or did in history may have to reinterpret their lives in light of what's happened in history. But it does not mean that these things will never be defined. If we look at the example of this bloke here, Julius Caesar, handsome-looking guy. We are pretty sure he existed, although in fact there's far less evidence for his existence than there is for Jesus Christ. We're pretty sure he was killed on March the 15th, 44 BC, and in fact he was assassinated on March the 15th, 44 BC. It is possible that our sources are unreliable, and that maybe Julius Caesar was assassinated on February 15th. Maybe he wasn't assassinated at all. But even if we have less certainty about this event than of other events maybe, it does not move the assassination of Julius Caesar into the subjective category. It is objectively his life in history. He either was assassinated on March the 15th or he wasn't. And the Christian faith similarly fits firmly in the objective truth category because it lives and dies based on a historical event, which was the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. The physical death and the physical resurrection of Jesus Christ. That is the ground zero for the Christian faith. There is a surprising amount of historical evidence, surprising amount, that this historical event actually happened. And the alternative explanations are surprisingly weak when you look at them. People may believe or not believe in the death and physical resurrection of Jesus, but regardless, it is an objective historical claim. It either happened or it didn't. It is not subjective. And as an aside, because Christianity says something, an objective fact happened in history in a certain way, it is also a claim that other things didn't happen. Again, Rebecca, quote from her, Christians believe that Jesus rose from the dead. Muslims believe that Jesus did not die, but that he was instead taken up into heaven. Jews and atheists and agnostics, for that matter, believe that Jesus died and remained dead. These claims are mutually exclusive. At this foundational level, religious truth cannot be untangled from historic truth. Even when we narrow our scope to monotheistic faith, which means faith in one God, to say that all religions are equally true is to lose our grip on history. The Christian faith stands or falls on a history event that either happened or it didn't. It is objectively based. It is not a subjective thing. Are you with me so far? Are you there? Okay, good. One of the things of postmodernism these days, though, is that they say, look, history is written by the winners. History is written by the winners. How can you have faith in documents that come through history when history is always written by those who are triumphant and have the power? The problem is, with the Christian faith, yes, the church at times in history has been very powerful, very rich. At times in history, the church has effectively ruled kings and emperors and nations. That just raises our postmodern hackle, doesn't it? How can we trust evidence when it comes from that kind of a conduit? But when you think of the documents we have, yes, the church did become rich and powerful for the time, but the writings that we have in our Bible predate that time. They were not in a worldly sense written by the winners, they were written by the losers. The New Testament was written by any worldly scale by losers. Probably haven't heard it that way said before. But they are witnessing to a man who was killed. Shamefully. And the ones that wrote these documents were not written by winners either. They were written by losers. Every single New Testament document was written to a persecuted faith community. Those in danger of losing their livelihoods, their freedoms, their families, even their lives. These are the documents we have in our New Testament. And there is historical and often a non-Christian evidence that the ones who wrote the letters and the documents of the New Testament were the losers of the world. Paul was beheaded with a sword. Peter crucified upside down. James, the brother of Jesus, was stoned to death. That was so significant, and I realized that. There is strong evidence from non-Christian sources that James, the one who grew up with Jesus, who shared the same dinner table with Jesus, the earthly brother of Jesus, the one who said, we are told, Jesus is nuts and crazy, and we want to disown him as a family because of the shame he brings on our family, later wrote a book, which we have in that New Testament with his name on it, calling his earthly brother Jesus glorious, a glorious Lord. He came full circle in his belief about who Jesus actually was. And then he suffered and died because of that, stoned to death. And that is witnessed to by sources outside of the Christian authorship. Another James, called James the Disciple, was beheaded by Herod. That's recorded in Acts. Andrew was crucified. It wasn't a very good career move to be a disciple. Are you picking that up? Wasn't that great? Andrew was crucified with ropes. Bartholomew, Thomas, Matthew, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, and Simon the Zealot. We don't have as strong evidence for what happened to them, but every single one of them, church tradition tells us, were killed for their faith in Jesus. Every single one. John was the one exception. They were the losers of the world. They were winners in the kingdom. But they believed so much in this Jesus that they would die for what they believed. But the New Testament was not written by the winners. Not at all. And so when we come to the idea of truth, I guess we come to the truth of Jesus and say, is it objective or is it subjective? Is it the truth or is it your truth? And probably what I think I would say to that question is it needs to be both. It is the truth, objectively, but God also calls you to make it your truth. It is both objective and it is subjective. And the danger there is twofold. Firstly, that we do not see it as objective truth. And secondly, when and if we do not make it our own truth and live and orientate our lives around the truth of Jesus Christ. Okay. Hopefully that's some fodder for thought. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to turn to someone and have a chat around that. What has struck you? What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Okay, 5 minutes, find 3 or 4 people, have a chat. Just thinking about that list, Lord, of those disciples who gave their lives because they believed in you and the things that you said about yourself and about the world. They were just convinced of the truth of what you said. It wasn't a daydream, wasn't made up, it wasn't fiction, it was something that they were willing to bank their lives on. And they did. And Lord, I guess my prayer for myself and perhaps for others here today is that the truth that we believe would be a truth that compels and motivates us. As the truth that we hold firmly to, not lightly to. Is the truth that we are willing to bank our lives on as well. Lord, may we live up to the example of those who have gone before us, who have lived and died convinced that after death, the reality of all that you have said that is true will be shown in all its glory, and their life will be vindicated. Thank you that you are the way and the truth and the light. We live in that glory. And as we go from this place today, may that be the foundation upon which we stand for Christ's sake.